In this lesson, we're going to look at how we can undo or remove a square. So when we have x squared, how we can work out what x is going to equal. The sort of question we're dealing with is one like this. So here we have x squared. We want to just end up with x equals something. And we need to work out how we're going to get there. One way you could think about it is that if we had this equation here, x minus 3 equals 2, the way we would find out what x equals is we would do the opposite of this minus 3. We'd add 3 to both sides. So in this case, where we've got x squared, we want to do the opposite of a square to work out that x equals something. And the opposite operation of a square is called the square root. So this here is a square root. And what it means is we're finding the two numbers which are multiplied together, which give that number. And they're both going to be the same number. So to explain that a bit better, if we have the square root of 121, we're really thinking about what two numbers, so what number x times x equals 121. And then we're going to find out that it's going to be 11. So the square root of 121 is going to be 11. And we get that here. So x is going to be 11. Now this is correct, however, we've missed one important value. Have a think about it, see if you can work out what it is. Remember, it's going to be two of the same number, so it's going to be x times x, so they're both going to be the same, is going to be equal to 121. Okay, so for those of you who are wondering, the number that you're going to get is going to be the negative of this one. So we're going to get minus 11 times minus 11 is going to be 121. And so what we're going to do when we write equations and answers like this, instead of writing minus 11, we're going to write plus minus 11. And this symbol here, this plus minus, just tells us that x could be either a plus 11 or a minus 11. Now, an important term for you to know is what a simple quadratic equation is. A quadratic equation is any equation raised to the power of 2. And you're only going to be looking at simple ones at this stage. But know that a quadratic equation is going to have something raised to the power of 2. Now, just to reiterate what we've been looking at, there are two numbers that we can square to get 9, just like there were two numbers that we could square to get 121, which were 11 squared, or minus 11 squared. So it's the same thing here. We can square 3, or we can square minus 3, and we're going to get 9. So there's always those two numbers that we can square. This is just the reverse of what we did before. However, can we get something where it's a negative number? Now, the reason we've got 3 times 3 equals 9 and minus 3 times minus 3 equals 9 is because if you multiply a positive by a positive, you're going to get a positive. If you multiply a negative by a negative, you're going to get a positive. However, here, we're multiplying. This x squared is the same thing as writing x times x. So the two numbers are exactly the same. So they're either both positive or both negative. Now, if they're both positive, you're going to have positive. If they're both negative, they're going to be positive. So we can't get an answer here that is negative. This has to be positive. So that means that we cannot get, so it's going to not equal minus 9. So in summary, you can't solve a quadratic where x squared is a negative number. Now that we've gotten through the theory, we're going to do a few examples. And hopefully these will help you understand the concept a bit more. So here we're being asked to solve what x squared equals 81. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the square root of x squared equals the square root of 81, because we're doing the opposite of this squared to both sides. Now what you need to do is you have to think of what numbers, so what two numbers multiplied together is going to give 81. Hopefully you can work out that is going to be 9. Now the square root and the square on this side are both going to cancel out, so you're going to get an x. And remember that because we've done the square root here, we need to write plus minus here, because it could be plus 9 or minus 9. If you didn't know that these numbers were 9 times 9 equals 81, you can also put it into your calculator. So you can put in square root of 81 and hit equals, and it will give you 9. Note that your calculator gives you 9, and you need to remember that it's plus minus 9. Now we've been asked to solve this one. We've got a negative 81. However, in this case, because we can't have a square number equaling a negative, we're going to say that x is undefined. Because you can't multiply two numbers that are the same together and get a negative. Okay, now this one is a bit more difficult, but again, it's the same principle. And we're relating back to the other solving of equations. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the things furthest from the x. And in this case, it's going to be the times 2. So remember, 2x is the same as 2 times x squared. So we're going to do the opposite of times 2, which is dividing both sides by 2. So we're going to get x equals 9. And then we're going to do square root to both sides. So we're going to get x equals plus or minus 3. And that's our solution. Now it's your turn to have a go at this question. Okay, so we're trying to work out what numbers x times x is going to equal 36. We're going to square root both sides. X squared equals the square root of 36. So x is going to equal, and those two numbers are 6, and it can be positive or negative 6. So that's our answer there. Have a go at this one. Okay, so because this is negative, x is undefined. Now, when we write undefined, that just means it's not possible to find. Finally, have a go at this one. So we're going to start by getting rid of this 2. So we divide both sides by 2. We get x squared equals 8 divided by 2 is 4. Then we're going to square root both sides, which gives us x equals plus or minus 2. And that's our final answer. Now, if you have any questions, please do bring them to me. Otherwise, feel free to continue with the classwork. Thank you.